Hey, and we're back with another episode of Before You Buy, that show where we give you some straight up gameplay and our first impressions of the latest games releasing. As usual, it's me, Jake. You can probably tell we've been very busy here. Today we're talking about the Resident Evil Village Winters expansion. This is co-written by both myself and Eric Thielenhaus. We've been taking a look at this, and it's significant because Resident Evil 7 had some pretty great add-ons, some really underrated stuff. So expectations are pretty high for this one. The DLC expansion here does offer a lot, so let's just jump in. It's not just one thing. It's actually 3 separate pieces of content that expands on the base game. There's an entirely new way to play the original game with third-person mode, an updated version of the Mercenaries side game mode that adds new characters and levels and stuff, and then the marquee item on this whole set, the Shadow of Rose add-on, which kind of sees you returning to the village, but now years later as teenage Rose Winters with new enemies and mechanics to kind of mix things up a bit. Now, Shadows of Rose is the big thing here, and the reason most people will be buying this DLC, at least I know that's why I really cared, but the other additions aren't just filler. They all seem like worthwhile additions in their own right. Firstly, with Shadow of Rose, gotta tell you right off the bat, because of embargoes with this review copy, we're not allowed to show any footage of Shadow of Rose at all. All we can do is show trailer stuff, so if you're wondering where the gameplay is, well, that's the reason why it's not really here, but it's not because the game is a mess or anything. It doesn't seem like a cyberpunk situation. Believe us, we checked. It's just spoiler stuff, I guess. So just know we won't spoil anything. This story kicks off years after Resident Evil Village, and Rose is now a teenager and fully assembled, fully intact, and after finding out about a potential way to get rid of the mysterious powers she has that were revealed in the main game, she enters the hive mind of the Metamycete in a search for answers. So the whole thing really kind of takes place within the beast that you've been facing off with. And the first thing worth pointing out, obviously, is that this is played in third person, and it might be a little jarring at first if you were used to third person, but the controls are identical to the main game, so it's pretty seamless to jump in right from the start. You're not going to have any problems. The gameplay does remain mostly the same as Village, just a little faster paced and less weapons, and it's set in this strange shifting world that actually has a lot more of the kind of the mold from Resident Evil 7. You collect a couple of weapons, you gather some materials and craft resources to survive, the stuff you'd expect, but the new mold enemies are relentless, and their animation when they grab you is freaking awesome. But even though you don't really got too much to take them on, and they do take a lot of bullets, Rose does eventually start to regain her abilities, which can then be used to remove black mold or at least slow down enemies. The slowdown thing is basically stasis from Dead Space, and it's kind of funny how things kind of come full circle with these survival horror games. I don't know. I was concerned about the abilities, but thankfully they are effective, but the time it takes to actually use them on an enemy and how close you have to be to use them, it just makes it very tense every time you attempt it. Like, it still feels like it has some stakes to it. It's not like a big power trip or anything. It's just useful enough where it doesn't feel like a gimmick. Now, the interesting thing is the environments. Because of the way it's set up, a lot of it does take place in areas kind of from Village. It's a clever way they reused a lot of this, though, because it's essentially kind of like a remix. This isn't a real world. This is like in the mind of the creature. It's like a simulation, so it's always warped and confusing, and there's cool little spins on how you experience certain areas. They definitely change things up in some surprising ways sometimes, and it's way more about funneling you through, and kind of like why I said it was faster paced earlier. It's kind of breezing you through everything. You're not really wandering around as much. Don't be concerned though, it's not just like a reuse of assets or anything. There is some new stuff in here, and you're gonna want to see that for yourself. Probably our favorite thing about this expansion is the focus on the horror. This is just all around a pretty freaky little expansion with some nasty death animations and some pretty scary stuff. The variety of the horror is actually impressive too. There are chases, there are hunts, and there's an especially memorable section that's actually a callback to one of the scariest parts of Village. You know what I'm talking about. And really, if you wanted more of like the mansion type horror stuff from the base game, you're probably gonna like what you get here. The whole thing is a little on the short side though. Our screen's set said about 3 hours or so, but it seems like with dying and resetting and stuff like that, it might take a little bit longer than that. It doesn't sound like a lot of time, but the pacing and the presentation, like I said earlier, it's pretty excellent. It's breezy. I mean, Village itself wasn't a very long game, so in comparison, I think the length is just about right for the content they've got here. The end game could have been a little longer, but for the most part, we're pretty satisfied with the length of the story. Overall, we did have a lot of fun with Shadows of Rose. We would have liked to have seen a few new areas because, like we said, a lot of stuff is reused. The creativity with how it is changed, like we said, significantly different in some spots towards the end, but still, we wanted a little more. But they used what they had very well. There's some pretty damn good scares and just a decent wrap up to the whole Resident Evil Village story and really the Winters family story. I think some people can argue it might feel a little rushed here and there. I was hoping for a bit more, but what we got, like I said, it doesn't suck. It's well-paced, and it doesn't outstay its welcome. I don't ultimately know how memorable it's going to be, and I don't know how worth it was like for this whole Winters family story. I don't know if it was as compelling as maybe Capcom was originally hoping it would be, but it still worked. But we got to talk about the other stuff with this expansion. The third-person mode might not sound like much, but the simple change in the perspective doesn't really change or break things significantly. The cutscenes where you don't have control typically switch back to first person, but for everything else, you're in a third-person perspective. That means they added new animations for pretty much every interaction in the game, like using bolt cutters, jumping a fence, using a healing item, using a puzzle, like a key puzzle item. It's actually more than I expected. Compared to a game built around being in third person, playing Village like this can sometimes be a claustrophobic experience, at least more so than originally. I think that's still good though. Certain encounters take place in really small areas, and third person really emphasizes that. And then on the flip side, like certain things that we thought were normal in first person really caught us off guard in third person, like the size of the Duke. Like we knew he was big, but like damn, like he's really big. Also, the main lobby area of the castle, like when you first get in, feels a lot bigger, but that's probably because you can see so much more of it at once with the camera. Now, for players who held off on the game because they don't like first-person games or want to experience the story again from a new angle, the third-person mode is a pretty well-integrated addition that doesn't feel janky or awkward or like a mod, Every once in a while, there's a little bit of a weird transition from third to first person with the cutscenes, but it's not that bad. I think ultimately, if you're a weirdo like me and you were looking forward to replaying the game in third person, just going back to Village, it seemed like it would be worth it, and now checking it out, it definitely is. Some things don't quite hit as hard, like that one gross thing in that one dark hallway, but it's still cool. The last thing we got to talk about is the Mercenaries changes. Now you can play as Lady Dimitrescu and Heisenberg in Mercenaries, and their playstyles are very different from everyone else's. One bummer thing, at least to us, is that these guys aren't unlocked right from the start. You actually have to complete objectives in the Mercenaries mode to then unlock them. After paying up for this, I kind of wanted to just jump into these characters, but yeah, there is definitely a little bit of a barrier here. Now, Chris and Ethan both played pretty similarly, but Heisenberg and Lady Dimitrescu feel really different. They're both melee-focused characters that have powers and special abilities rather than guns. But if you're into the Mercenaries mode, they make really unconventional, weird, but good additions that open up the possibilities of the mode and just kind of a new way to have fun in this arena. At the end of the day, like they're not some revolutionary new change, but it is a fun add-on. The fun is the most important thing here, and it adding to the replayability. It works. Overall, all of us here at Gameranx would say that the Winters expansion is a pretty good addition. It's not mind-blowing. I wouldn't put this up there with some of the all-time great DLCs that have come out in the past, but it's solid, and $20 is a fair price for what you're getting here. If you're looking for an excuse to play more Resident Evil Village, then I think this expansion is worth picking up, especially around this spooky time of year. But that's it. That's a before you buy, guys. You know how this works by now. We give you some pros, some cons, and some personal opinion, and now we want to hear yours down in the comments. What are you thinking? Are you jumping in? Are you more excited to just replay Village, or are you looking forward to the Rose DLC expansion? Do you want to see where the Winters family thing goes? Let's talk about any of this stuff down in the comments. Now, if this helped inform your purchasing decision at all or anything like that, clicking the like button's all you got to do. It really helps us out. And if you're new, consider subscribing, maybe hitting that notification bell, because we put out new videos every single day. But as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.